Students. For this project, it's about focusing on how we animate things or how things can be used in animation. So for this project, you could either go the way of creating a story and a storyboard and a concept for an animation that has a MacGuffin in sort of the central part of that. But importantly, I'd like to see you guys also experiment with stop motion animation and animating with objects in sort of unexpected ways. Whether those objects are bits of magazine pages or, I don't know, your keys, pens and pencils, COVID test strips, whatever you've got at home. But the idea to explore animation and be a little bit more freer and experimental with what you're making. So I'd like to see you guys, particularly on Friday. Sinead's going to be doing a workshop with you guys where you will have an opportunity to animate and do some experimental animation with that and think about your objects. So you can construct paper animations, you can work digitally. On Friday as well, you've got the After Effects workshop where you guys can see ways of working digitally, especially if you're interested in 2D animation. And then once again on Tuesday, tomorrow, so the day after Monday, you guys have the opportunity to catch up on your Photoshop skills, particularly if you feel like you're still struggling with the basics of Photoshop and that's holding you back from doing Photoshop animations. But also in the afternoon, if you guys are interested in exploring things like character animate and animate later on, it's going to be really important to take on board the skills and learning how to use Adobe Illustrator and working with vectors rather than raster images. A vector image is an image that is made up of like a connect the dots. And basically the computer connects the dots and that creates the image rather than working with pixels, which is just like a bunch of little squares of color that all stack up to make your image. So vector images are really important for animation because we can scale them and move them a lot more freer without having to worry about pixelation happening in not nice ways. I like a bit of pixel art as much as the next person, but if I want something to look realistic and all of a sudden it's a bit pixelated, that's not ideal. So basically you can either create some experiments and explore those and export those, or you can create a project pitch and a theme for an animation that works as a storyboard with the MacGuffin. This is about sort of working a little bit more freely. It's a 2-week project, so there isn't a lot of time to construct a huge animation, but it's about giving yourself that time to just experiment and try a few things out and present perhaps a selection of a few things from the workshops and that you've done on your own. So make a series of short experimental tests, animations from different materials and objects. Think about what types of animation you'd like to produce and the story you'd like to tell in the chosen medium. So, maybe try charcoal, try paint, try plasticine, try stop motion, try 2D animation. You're early in your days of figuring out what type of animator you're going to be, and this is an opportunity for you to try a bunch of things to go, you know what, I tried stop motion, I am all thumbs, and I kept moving everything, and I kept having to, I'm a 2D animator. That's fine, but it's the idea that you've tried it and you've explored it. Think about what types of stop motion. Look at sort of experimental and replacement animation. I'll show you guys some examples of that in the playlist to follow. And work with your phone. You can create a 2D animation. Don't forget to storyboard and plan out. So even if you're doing a short little animation, do plan it out. Like, that's the thing that's missing in a lot of people's sketchbooks, is the idea that you've planned out your work. You just kind of like have a mood board or a little like mind map, and then final outcome, it's the steps in the middle. You need to put that into your sketchbook somehow, and ideally as part of the process. So be able to trace your research into your final outcome. After this video, there's a video that is about the exhibition by Walt Disney at the Met Museum. I know some of you guys are not the biggest fans of Walt Disney. I am not a big Disney fan either. But the reason I want you to look at that exhibition is to see how Disney animators took inspiration from Rococo art and design. And I'd like you to do the same sort of thing. If you are doing character design, maybe your objects have influence from characters from different types of artwork. So think about, in your design process where your influences are coming from. So maybe your character has the silhouette similar to a teapot, or or your character has a reference that is to something else. Like if my character is really sharp, maybe their hair kind of looks like scissor blades or something like that. So I'd really like to look at sort of that inspiring Disney at the Met. It's half an hour, and the guy's got a really pretentious, like snobby British accent. Apologies, but now that I've said that, you can laugh about it. Look at people like William Kentridge and how he's created his work using charcoals. I know a few of you guys are not the biggest fan of charcoal, but if you, Sinead's going to talk to you about how to do sort of charcoal animation on Friday. And Thursday, you guys have a drawing workshop all day Thursday in the studio. So please be sure to bring in some of your objects for that workshop as well. So once again, this is the exhibition to look at with Walt Disney. And think about how sort of we can get inspired by objects around us, and borrowing ideas from the things we've seen. Check out this. I'll play this little animation. This is a nice little example of replacement animation. Replacement animation is literally when we animate objects by replacing them with other things. So let me just skip ahead.
Dragonflies hovered over the...
And it's about this lovely little collection of insects and bugs and animating them through taking lots of photographs of this location. And there's lots of different examples of this, but this might be something to consider because animation itself is just a series of images that, when played back, create the art and the illusion of movement. So we can do that through photographing similar objects. You can do it with things like stones or loads of tea kettles. It's about having a large collection of things, but particularly this one is quite nice because it looks like the bugs are actually crawling. Like I said, this animator just went in and photographed a ton of insects that were at this one museum. So that's in the playlist that's in my UCA for you for animation students to have a further look at and maybe getting some inspiration from as well. Then we've got good old Jan Svankmajer. Now, your animation doesn't have to be narrative. It can be experimental in nature. And Jan Svankmajer's work is a fantastic example of that. I'm not going to play the entire animation because it is quite long. And his work he explores a lot of themes that come from sort of nightmares and crazy dreams. So some of his stuff is quite uncanny, quite unsettling, but might be worth exploring in your own animation. He uses clay as well as objects to kind of create his animation. And I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit. So you can construct the objects to look like people. And build characters out of your objects is something worth considering. The film's a lot longer, but just to give you a taste of what sort of things Jan did and maybe take some inspiration from Jan Svankmajer. He's inspired whole generations of animators. So nice example of more sort of abstract experimental animation as well. And then the next one to look at, and the link for this is on my UCA as well, is a lovely little short animation called The Coin. And basically it's looking at how somebody's childhood relates to the story and can build a story around it. So it's basically about this idea that her family had this tradition of putting a coin in one of the dumplings that they eat at New Year's, And that's the sort of the start of the story. So it's to say this memory, this tradition, and how that can help shape a little bit of story about the character's life. And this is all done with stop motion puppets. For the next project too, for the anti-hero project, Sinead's going to do a workshop with you guys about building your own little stop motion felt puppets, so you can make something as adorable and cute as that as well. So I hope you guys all have an idea of what sort of, basically for this project, you're creating either a pitch and an idea for a short animation with a storyboard, or you're creating a series of experimentations or a longer experimentation using objects to either narrate and tell a story, or objects in an interesting way to create an abstract animation. So have some fun with this. It's a 2-week project. Take part in the workshops, learn the After Effects, pick up Illustrator, take part in the workshops with Sinead this week, and the next week you have plenty of time to expand upon that and explore and hopefully create something really fun and innovative. And I really look forward to seeing what you guys come up with.